Yeah, so I'm looking at the rundown. So are we going to do the description before the clip? Is that the plan?
I could. Or wait, are you doing the descriptions now, or do you want me to do the description still? I think I did the description before, and I'll do that too. And then you can put it wherever you want to. I thought we were doing the clip
Okay,
before.
so hang on. I'm like looking. Maybe it has been a while.
Everything's a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy. Deja vu.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Deja Reviewed podcast, where we talk about the original versions of TV shows and movies that were later rebooted. In Season 2, we're discussing the first and only season of the original Battlestar Galactica. I'm Michael.
And I'm Mark.
And today we're discussing Episode 4, Lost Planet of the Gods, Part 1. And Lost Planet of the Gods Part 1 originally aired on September 24th, 1978. It was directed by Christian I. Nyby II, written by Glenn A. Larson, and starring Richard Hatch, Dirk Benedict, and Lorne Green.
Every man, woman, and child in the fleet could die.
Security, I want everyone who's been in contact with Flight Sergeant Jolly and Lieutenant Boomer under strict quarantine.
This better be good. I'm delaying an awful sweet reunion. Apollo, I promise you a night you will long remember.
Don't touch that door! The three of you back in that room!
Guard, send for my staff. Tell them to get isolation chambers down here as fast as they can.
What is it? What happened?
Maybe the end of us all.
And the description of Lost Planet of the Gods Part 1 and presumably Part 2 is from IMDb, is when a large number of colonial warriors come down with a serious infection, Apollo and Starbuck must train a number of female shuttle pilots to fly Vipers for combat duty.
Well, I'm glad somebody clarified that's what the plot was, because I was like halfway through this episode, like, I have no idea what this episode is about. They didn't introduce the conflicts forever, and all those elements you just brought up, I don't think we're like halfway through the episode before we get anything about the pilots coming down with something or training the female shuttle pilots, which I want to get back to that at some point. But it was a good halfway through the episode before any of those plot elements showed up.
I would say even more than halfway through.
Yeah, it might have been 2/3.
I will point out again that we were 2 minutes and 36 seconds into this episode before we actually saw any new content. And I will also point out at the very beginning of this episode, they start launching into all these scenes. And I thought I missed like a previously on Battlestar Galactica. And I think it was scenes from the upcoming episode, because I was like, what is happening?
Okay, I'm glad that confused you as well, because I did the same thing. I'm like, oh, I must have missed an episode. I didn't see any of that. And I like went back and like, no, this is the next one. And it was scenes from later that episode, but there was no explanation. It just launches right into like these clips that play exactly like a previously on would have. I was like, what the hell is going on?
With no introductory, like this week on Battlestar Galactica
Right.
or previously on Battlestar Galactica to warn us what was happening. It just launched into a montage of scenes. It was very strange.
Is that something like maybe I should ask Derek, was that common at the time or something and people would have known how to read it? Because I was totally bewildered.
He'll never come back.
He had fun. He'll come back. So this also was the first episode we get that's actually, I guess it's weird because it's part 1 of 2 again, but it's made as a TV length episode instead of being that feature length pilot that then they split into 3. So this is the first one that apparently was intended as an episode. And even though they had a lot of lack of content at the beginning, as you mentioned, it was a different title sequence and credit sequence and stuff. It wasn't just replaying the feature length version again.
Yes, and it was a kind of weird choice that the teaser scenes from the upcoming episode were the background of a star field, and then it was like you were looking through a telescope, I guess.
I've heard the same thing. It's like they
Vipers
have the
flying
matte
around.
filter on of it, exactly like we get when you're looking through a telescope. I'm like, why are we doing this again? Like,
It was weird.
That's not something that happens accidentally. Like, that was an intentional choice someone made. Like, it'd be really cool if we put all these clips in the middle of a circle and have a star field around it.
And Mark, you talking about us getting to kind of a real episode, I still don't quite think that we're at a real episode yet, because this was almost an hour long of playtime. I'm sure when it was originally aired, it was a full hour, which I don't know if those are what the regular episodes are. I haven't looked ahead. But like you mentioned, it's part 1 of 2 parts. So we're essentially going to be watching another 2-hour movie, which is a little bit down from the 3-hour movie we watched to start this series. But I feel like we still aren't quite getting the feel of what a one-off Battlestar Galactica episode is going to be like.
And maybe they don't know how to do one. Like, I'll just, hear me out for a second. Most of my students work in, we're making short films, or occasionally they're making feature films or writing feature scripts. Occasionally I've had people work in a sort of series thing. Either they're writing something as like a spec for a TV, or they're trying to write more recently like a web series. And one of the things that's really hard for them to kind of wrap their head around is it's not just you write a long thing and split it up into short chunks. Like you have to have that overall arc of the show, or ideally you would, but you also have to have an arc within each episode where you're going to set up, here's the thing for this episode, and here's the conflict, and here's how we're going to resolve that, even if we haven't resolved the big ongoing questions. That was something we saw in the first 3 episodes, and we're willing to cut it a little bit of slack. It's like, okay, well, this was done as a feature, and then they kind of had to split it up. So, okay, some of that's not going to... But this had exactly the same problem. Like, they're just setting stuff up, and nothing... Like, we don't get the conflict till half or more of the way through. None of the conflicts are resolved. Like, it feels like random scenes of things happening, unrelated, and also not really considering how the various threads relate. Like... One that I almost laughed out loud was it went right from like all the pilots are in their cryo tubes, or whatever, they're all going to die, to like Apollo like making out with his girlfriend like, hey, good to see you again. Like all your freaking friends are like on, as an editor, this is a terrible cut from like, we're all going to die to like, hey, let me make out with you.
Let's roll all the way back to the beginning of this episode then, because I have some comments about this relationship between Apollo and Serena, because when did this happen? First of all, the episode opens up with a dinner party with Adama, Serena, Apollo, Starbuck, Athena, and the kid, Boxy or whatever. And I'm like,
but not the dog. I want to know where the dog was.
Yes, but not. I was like, what a weird dinner party gathering of these people. And then Apollo stands up and says that he wants to marry Serena. I'm like, when did this happen? And I get that they had their little relationship moments. He walked in on her. Oh, no, Starbuck had walked in on Athena changing.
Right.
And I get that they were developing that Apollo-Serena relationship, but we didn't see any of that, I feel like. Well, not none of that, but we saw hardly any romance developing between the two of them.
I thought they had done a setup for like, okay, this is going to be a long developing.
Yes.
We've just seen the start of they have some kind of connection and seem to like each other. And then over the course of a couple seasons, this will turn into something. Instead, here we are in essentially the first episode after the pilot. And he's like, we're getting married. I had this like, wait, what?
But, okay, I'm glad you were like, what the hell?
Was the dinner party set up for him to make this announcement? Because there was this weird thing at the beginning where Commander Adama is like, well, we've been going for a while and I got to get moving and you guys have your thing. And Apollo's like, okay, I'll finally do it. Like they'd been waiting for someone. I don't know. Did I read that right?
Thought the same thing. And then I'm like, it doesn't matter. Because the overarching thing, though, that was tickling the back of my mind throughout this whole dinner party scene was how much better the new Battlestar Galactica did showing these human moments within the context of this desperate struggle for survival. This dinner party, if I didn't know the human race was on the verge of extinction, of being wiped out by these robots, I would have been like, what is the context of this ridiculous scene? And Edward James Olmos, in his interpretation of Adama, did such a great job of being always gravely serious about the situation they were in, while still allowing for these human moments and still allowing to show emotion, but always being like, hey, our number one priority is, my number one priority is keeping the human race alive and keeping this fleet safe. And then when you would see these human moments trickle in, it was like, oh, Adama has feelings. He's not just this military bot. He is and he was such a lovable character for that, even though he was this strict disciplinarian. He didn't have a good relationship with Apollo. But this dinner party was ridiculous, like in the context of them fleeing from the Cylons, I thought.
Well, and let's also remember that they spent a lot of time in the previous episode establishing that they don't have enough food and are rationing things, and then are having the fancy dinner party. I'm like, well, that's interesting. And then later in the episode, they're like throwing a giant party and stealing drinks from the officers' quarters and stuff. So apparently they stumbled somewhere in between episode 3 and 4 onto massive stores of food, and there's no longer a shortage. Or Adama's just hoarding it all.
Yeah, which is also bizarre because even the Cylons later on in the episode, they're like, why would they be going into this asteroid or toward our outpost planet? And they're like, well, maybe they need, or no, toward an asteroid. I think it was toward an asteroid for some reason.
It was their outpost, which may have been an asteroid.
Okay, because I was like, why would there be asteroids? Or why would there be supplies on asteroids? And they're like, maybe they need food and fuel or something. I'm like, why would there be food and fuel on the asteroids? And to their credit, one of the Cylons like, well, there aren't food.
Like, there's no resources on this asteroid.
Right, yeah.
Which then leads to the question, why are the Cylons setting up outposts on places where there are literally no resources or anything of value?
Well,
which turned out to be handy because the one ship in the universe just happens to fly right by it.
To be fair, the Cylons probably don't need, I mean, they obviously don't need food. And if they, I don't know how their ships are powered, but maybe they don't need as much fuel.
Maybe. I don't know.
I
mean, that was one of the lesser plot holes, but I was also like, really? That's where you set up your base? It's like the place where literally like, well, why would they go there? There's nothing of value there. But we set up a base.
Okay, if we're going to jump into plot holes, because my next note after that dinner party was, did the Viper pilots actually have spacesuits? Because I feel like they get into the Vipers in just their normal clothes, but then they bring it up later.
Okay, this was weird.
Yes, go on, please.
Well, so we find out there's going to be that they need to train some more pilots, and then we cut to Starbuck in a room surrounded by what looks sexy at your first glance like sexy ladies in their bra and panties. Like it looks like underwear. And then they explain you need these compression suits for the vacuum of being in your Viper or whatever, so you can maintain whatever you need compression suits for.
So you can maintain ratings so we can see your female forms.
But their compression suits, like, are Starbuck and Apollo wearing the same ones? Because their compression suits were basically a sort of sheer nothing over almost all of them. And then like black fabric, literally where you would just wear your lingerie. That was it.
So, okay, yes, for sure. So that was super weird. And it was funny because that was way before this scene when I brought this up, because they're all just jumping into because, you know, classic Star Wars, everyone remembers Luke's orange jumpsuit and all the X-Wing pilots' jumpsuits, because if you do survive your ship exploding or have to jettison into space, I assume just your street clothes aren't going to protect you from the void of space. So it was a very, very strange decision. I'm glad you picked up on that as well, because I was like, compression suits is what we're going with. And he's like, oh, you can wear them under your clothes. I'm like, well, how come none of I mean, I get why for ratings, but I'm like, well, they should all probably be wearing clothes then.
Yeah, and when they do put on their clothes over them, it is the same stuff. So at least they have the same uniform as Starbuck and Apollo. But like you said, it's not like the orange jumpsuit or like a flight suit or something. It's like they have a jacket unbuckled.
Yeah, leather jacket.
And they're like regular pants and a t-shirt. That's their flight uniform.
And going along with how cheap of a, hey, we just want ratings, we're going to show all these beautiful women in skin-tight leotards, essentially. When they had to train pilots, the only available people that were not already pilots were only women. That is a very strange happenstance to have happen on that ship.
So it kind of tried to explain it with like, these were the shuttle pilots and now we're training them how to fly. And that kind of makes sense if you said like, okay, we need some fighter pilots. Do we have anyone who has any flight training? I'm thinking of the scene in Independence Day where they're like, if you have any flight training at all, we can use you. And, you know, Randy Quaid's like, I'm flying crop duster.
Yeah.
Okay. But then, so my question is okay, so was shuttle pilot a gendered occupation? You had to be a woman to be a shuttle pilot? But it wasn't even that, because Serena was like a journalist or something, and she's there who just like signed up like, yeah, I heard you need pilots. I want to be a pilot. So no men wanted to. I was equally confused about the whole thing.
Yeah, and Serena had gotten into it, as she's explaining to Apollo. She had gotten into it because that was the big reveal. Apollo goes and the sooner they can get Boxy, the kid, out of this show, the better, because that kid is just annoying.
Maybe the robot dog can eat him.
Yeah, but Apollo goes into the room to talk to Serena, and she comes out in her flight suit, I guess, or in her pilot's uniform. And he's like, what the hell is this? Because he's thinking she's going to come out in her wedding dress. And she tells him that, of course, she's gotten into this program. She's been training. He's like, you can't train. And she's like, it's only to be a shuttle pilot. And then there's the jump from shuttle pilot, though, to combat pilot that they have to make later. So I think they put out a call for, hey, everyone, we need shuttle pilots. So that should have been a mixed gender bag of people, old people, young people. But instead, they get like hot 25-year-old women and nothing else for this pilot program.
So I missed the part where she said she was just signing up to be a shuttle pilot. But even then, okay, so she's a cadet, like literally just started her training. And now this is the only pool they have to draw from for the fighter pilots, is like,
right.
Not like, okay, we need all the shuttle pilots who have been flying shuttles their whole lives. It's like, well, this person has 1 day of cadet training. They're ready to hop in the Viper.
And am I missing something? When, other than the annihilation of the human race, we haven't seen that many Viper pilots get killed, have we? Or have we?
I don't think so, no.
Where the hell are they all? Like,
they're all in their cryo tubes.
Well, okay. But the call was put out for pilots before.
Correct.
So the shuttle pilot call, or just general pilot call that Serena answered, was put out before this ridiculous and very topical and very timely disease forces all these clients into self-quarantine, or for clients, forces all these pilots into self-quarantine.
Spoken like a lawyer.
And then after the disease runs rampant, then all the shuttle pilots are made combat pilots. So what happened before? Why did they need so many pilots? I feel like Galactica has not lost that many pilots.
Fair, but in amongst all the many plot holes, I guess this was one that doesn't bother me a ton. If you think of, they basically have whatever they have this now fleet, and a lot of these ships were maybe not designed to be part of a fleet. They were just taking literally whatever ships they could.
True.
But suddenly they probably have a lot of need to move people back and forth between all these ships.
Sure.
And probably the pilots they needed flying their Vipers. They didn't have a core of, I don't know. I'm trying to justify it, but can we get back? Let's get back to the scene with Serena and Apollo for a second.
Yeah.
Because, man, this sort of blatant sex discrimination there of Apollo is like, well, you can't be a pilot. Like, I'd worry about you and stuff. She's like, you go out on combat missions all the time.
Yeah, I actually like that they put that line in there. She's like, well, how is this any different than you leaving all the time?
I'm a man. I'm doing manly things like flying into a black empty void of something weird, whatever that whole thing was. Yeah.
Can I also say,
I'm glad they called it out, but I'm like, Apollo, you just walked right into that one. Like, that's like the dumbest thing you could have said.
Yes. And can I say too, if they're not going to show us them falling in love, can you have some chemistry between your two actors? Because I was like, I think Richard Hatch, I am going to say as an overall comment, I actually think the acting is getting better. Like, this episode was not as because the first episode that we watched, I'm like, I don't think I'm even going to make it through this first mini series or like huge movie. I think the acting is getting a little bit better as we're going.
I think you're right, but it started at such a low point. I mean, that first episode was horrible.
Yes. And my expectations are probably where they should be. Not that I had big expectations before, but I think now that I've actually seen what it is, and Derek helped a ton for kind of setting the tone of, yes, this was kind of the standard. Like when I critiqued a bunch of the Twilight Zone episodes because I'm like, this is some bad acting. But it's kind of was how acting was in the late 50s, early 60s. So,
but again, we saw some really good acting in some of the Twilight Zones as well.
True. Yeah.
I don't know.
And I think this is getting better. And I think part of it is figuring out these characters, because a note I have here is that for the first time, I think we started to get a sense that Starbuck is the best pilot. Even though Apollo's kind of the golden boy, he's the captain's son and all that stuff. I felt like because Starbuck went into this void later on in this episode, there's this basically not really a black hole, but just magnetic void, I guess is what the Cylons had described it as, where essentially there's no stars and it's easy to get disoriented and lost in this void. So Apollo goes in, they're kind of losing communication, and Starbuck's like, okay, I'm going to come straight in. When you see me, shoot your lasers, or I'll shoot my lasers, and you can find me, and then I'm going to do a 180 and come straight back out. You know, it was with no instrumentation and all this stuff. We kind of started to get the sense of Starbuck being the hotshot pilot finally.
Yeah, that was a nice little bit. I agree with you, trying to build up who that character is and finding a way to like, okay, when all the instrumentation's lost, and even Apollo's like, what are you using as a guide? And he's just like, my nose.
The end of my nose, yeah.
Yeah, and I think what that also did help to build a little for his character that was implied in the early ones that we haven't really seen is I think the reason he's not like the golden boy is he's not going to necessarily be a great team player. He's a little erratic and stuff, but seems to be like the most naturally talented. So when you're like in the black void of nothing and all you have is your instincts, that's when you need a Starbuck.
Oh, totally. And which is exactly what it was, that relationship was in the reboot.
Yeah.
And when I say golden boy, it was Apollo that's always been the golden boy. He's the captain's son. Right. The same as it is right here. Before we move away from the sexy female pilots, do you think that this episode or this mini movie was the reason that they, or maybe triggered in their heads that they should make Starbuck a woman for the reboot? Because in the back of my head, I was like, I wonder if this influenced their choice to cast Katie Sackhoff, which, again, I think is one of the best choices they made for the reboot, because I love her, and I loved her in Mandalorian. I won't say anything more than that. She is in season 2, though. And I love her. I love Katie Sackhoff, and I loved her as Starbuck. And I was wondering, I was like, I wonder if this is what made Moore think to cast, I'm sure he didn't do the casting, but to have her as a female character instead of the macho cigar chopping Starbuck. Not that she still wasn't macho and chopped cigars.
Right. I don't know. I wonder, that would be an interesting thing to look into on the reboot. My guess would be no, it's not seeing this. It was thinking about what do we want this show to be in 2004 as opposed to 1978. Yeah. And I think one of the things I don't know. I'm sure somebody out there who follows Battlestar, the Battlestar wiki or something would know the answer on that. I wonder if that was always intended as a female character in the reboot, or if they wrote that character and Katie Sackhoff was the best actor for it.
And they didn't care one way or another. Could be. Although they did, and they could have developed this, I suppose, too. They did develop the relationship between, or they added that plot line that there was a relationship between Zach, Apollo's dead brother, and Starbuck in the reboot.
Right, but I don't know if that was in the original script or if that was something they developed once they had the cast. And
also it could have been two dudes.
It could have been fair.
It's 2020. It could
that
have been
seems like
2004.
I think they probably wouldn't have gone that way. I could be
probably
wrong,
not.
But that seems maybe
a
not
little too progressive. But
But I think one of the things that made Starbuck in the reboot so successful was the character was essentially like they had the relationship issues, and I don't want to play into like say Katie Sackhoff was just playing it like a dude or something. Like she owned that character,
yes,
but you didn't feel like that was a character written as a female. Like she gave as good as she got. She had a lot of the male tendencies in that pilot's room.
It was written as a badass fighter pilot.
Yeah.
It was clearly. And she was the best one for it.
And I'll think of, Mike, the film we shot a decade ago that you acted in, that I directed. The character that Brina played in that was originally going to be a guy, and Brina was the best person who auditioned for it. It's like, all right, she gets that role, and honestly didn't change most of how that role was written other than adding in a relationship dynamic that kind of was spontaneous, like, oh, hey, actually, this was something we didn't think about in an original draft. What if we did this as a little subplot? But basically just took the same character and like, okay, we're going to put whoever the best actor is in that.
And there were 5 female actresses that were way better at the role that you gave me, but they all said no. So,
we ended up casting you like over did we have Zoom at that point? It must have been over Skype or something.
Google Hangouts maybe.
But like from Chicago, because I don't know why. That seemed like, no knock on you, that seemed like it should have been the easy part to cast. Like, it wasn't the lead. It didn't have all the hard jargon. It wasn't as developed a character in the early drafts, and we could not find somebody for that, which was why we ended up, I'd say, like, last resort. We're like, normally we're like going through auditions and like, well, let me try Mike and see if he could come in and do it. But that was inconvenient for everybody. Like,
Yeah,
that
because everyone else was in
the idea.
Texas and I was in Chicago.
Yeah.
That's how good I was at that role. And you should probably mention it's called How Not to Quit Your Day Job for people that actually want to look it up.
There you go.
Back to Battlestar.
Back to Battlestar. Maybe, do we want to go back to Battlestar?
Yeah.
Okay, so while we're on the pilot's training program and such, I really did not buy the, okay, they've had like 2 days of training. They don't really seem to know very well what they're doing. Let's launch a whole fleet of them and
See what happens.
well, like, that just seems like a bad idea. And Adama kind of weighs it and decides to do it, which seemed like a poor tactical decision. But then they like take out not like a major Cylon fleet, but there's like a dozen Cylon fighters out there, and they take
That was
out
the
all of
biggest
them.
battle we've seen, I think, so far.
Yeah, with no casualties. I'm like, are the Cylon pilots this bad that they get completely decimated by a group of people who literally have never flown Vipers before and are in like their second day of flight training period? Like that, I would be embarrassed if I was the Cylons. And also, how did this war go for this many years if the Cylons are that bad? Or
Well,
was
'cause
this
they disappeared for a long time.
was this outpost such a, not in this one they didn't. They've been battling constantly,
Oh, you're right.
remember?
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
So then I was like trying to justify this. I'm like, maybe this like barren asteroid with no resources that they have to staff this base, like that's like the backwater, like all the rejects from the Cylon like training school get like shipped there if you can't cut it anywhere else.
I have so many thoughts on this. First of all, for every Cylon ship that gets defeated, there's 3 Cylons flying those versus 1 per every Viper that gets defeated. So, and I don't feel like the Cylon fighters are that much bigger than the Vipers. So I'm a little confused why the Cylons are cramming 3 people into those ships.
I'm also a little
2,
confused why every time they cut inside the Cylon ship, it is the same shot and has been for 4 episodes now.
because they don't
got
move
one
their
shot
lips.
of the 3 of them and like, we'll just keep using this one.
Yes, and you can put whatever dialogue you want over it because they don't have moving lips. In regards to this female squad being sent out, which is, and regardless if they were female or male, in regard to having this
Keep digging the hole,
brand new-
Mike. Dig the hole.
in regard to this brand new fighter pilot squad being sent out, are we to believe that the only experienced pilots left are Boomer, Jolly, Starbuck, and Apollo? And there were going to be no other pilots with some combat experience
No, okay.
flying with them on their first time?
No, I got
Oh,
I got
by
this
this
one
time
for
they
you.
were all sick.
They're,
You're
at
right.
this point, they're all
Duh.
sick,
Okay,
and they
never mind.
did build in the thing like, hey, we're gonna have this party, and every single pilot is gonna
Yeah,
be at
that's
it,
true.
drinking together
Bachelor party.
to basically excuse why they are all
Yeah, bachelor party
incapacitated.
for Apollo.
Right.
Which, by the way, I finally saw Ed Begley Jr. at that bachelor party because he was the main protagonist, I guess, of the bachelor party planning.
the one who was getting in
Right.
trouble for stealing the ambrosia.
Exactly, yeah. So Ed Begley Jr., we finally found him in Battlestar Galactica as just a pilot that was at this thing.
In the 4th
And then-
episode, he's been credited in.
Yes, yeah, exactly. So as a side question to that, and you're right, I completely forgot that the main driving force of this entire episode was that the pilots were all sick.
Well,
But
because it didn't happen until like 25 minutes into the episode.
was there...
Okay, just literally the first entire half of this episode, some of it was setting some things up that ended up kind of relating later, but it was 25 minutes of this episode fumbling itself around and doing a lot of work and spending a lot of time basically to set up. I kind of got the sense the whole Serena Apollo thing was only so that Apollo could be having a bachelor party, which was only so that they could get all the pilots in this room, which was only so that they can all get sick, which was only so that they can go into the cryotube, and we need to bring out the newbie pilots. Like, it was all a bunch of setup to get to somewhere that they didn't really need to be in the first place.
Is it forgiven at all if it's only the first quarter of a 2-hour quote unquote episode? I'm legitimately asking you, as someone that's in film, does it make it better or worse? Because I know they should have set up and paid off stuff in this episode, even as a 2-parter. But if you're considering this again another hour and 40-minute movie or hour and 50-minute movie, a half hour into it, is that enough to have set up all these things that presumably they'll pay off next week?
Kind of. Like, the general rule of thumb is like around the first, and these are very loose and a lot of people dispute these, but let's just say as sort of the classic screenwriting rules, for whatever that's worth, like about a quarter in, you should have your like inciting incident that sets the rest of the plot in motion. So basically you get a quarter of the movie to establish your characters, set up the premise and stuff, and at the end of that quarter is like the thing that throws a wrench in everything, and here's where the rest of the movie is going to go.
So
maybe they're doing that, but like they're setting the issue with this is that they weren't just establishing things, they were running a plot that was like establishing stuff to set up a plot point later that was itself only there to set up another plot point, which, okay, yes, that's what a plot is each thing sets up, but none of them were interesting in itself. It was like turning themselves in contortions to get to the point where like, how is it all the pilots are sick and nobody else? Like, I'm picturing the writer's room, and that's the problem they're trying to solve. And they're like, well, if we put in a half hour beforehand and build in this potential marriage, and then these guys go to this asteroid, like, I don't know. It didn't feel like it didn't feel like it then got to a point where like, and here's the big, meanwhile, let's not forget, we also have Apollo and Starbuck out in the random black void that seems to thus far have no connection to any of these other things going on.
Yeah. Before we get away from the bachelor party, so as Ed Begley
Things you
Jr.
never thought you'd say about Battlestar Galactica.
Yeah. Yes. As Ed Begley Jr. and all the pilots basically on the ship are celebrating before Apollo even gets there, they're having this party and security busts in. Why is security so shitty to them? Like, you would think if we're the last remaining vestige of humanity, one, first of all, why wasn't security starting to train to be these replacement pilots? And two, why were they such dicks to them? It's like, okay, guys, we get it. You would think that you would be encouraging. And again, this is why the reboot did such a good job of this. Any little bit of mirth or happiness or hope you could find on the Battlestar was so, and I'm sorry, I'm going to spoil something from 2004's version of Battlestar, but when remember Kaylee, when she killed herself, she was with Chief, I think. She was this not naive. Naive isn't the right word for it, but just one of the hopeful characters on the Battlestar. She had been a mechanic, and then I think she became a pilot, or maybe she had stayed a mechanic. Yeah. And she ends up falling. Oh, no, I take it back. She had married Apollo, and Apollo was treating her like crap, like just kind of ignoring her because he was still fixated on Starbuck. And I think her name is Kaylee. She ends up killing herself.
It was not Kaylee.
Thinking of Callie. It was not Callie. It was.
You're also getting a ways into the series at this point.
Okay, fair enough. But if you haven't watched it, you should have watched it by now. Anyhow, Apollo marries this character, and she had bangs, kind of reddish hair. Anyhow, she ends up killing herself, and she had been this sort of bastion of hope and good and humanity on the Battlestar, and it was one of the hardest episodes to watch, I thought, because not only was the actress great and was this relationship so heartbreaking because Apollo was so out of his mind kind of at this point in his own depression, that it really was kind of a stark, like, oh man, nothing really good is happening here. And this character that was trying to cling to these moments of good and cling to this failed marriage with Apollo was sort of the glimmer of hope that was on that show. And when that got cut off, it was just a really hard episode to watch. And it's still, I mean, it was fantastic. It was a great choice by Moore. So all I'm saying, these asshole security guards should have been like,
I'm like blanking on that.
Ronald Moore, the writer.
Isn't it Glenn
the
Larson?
Guy who wrote the reboot. No, the guy who wrote the reboot.
Oh, okay.
Sorry. I just think that it was, the security guard should have come in and been like, okay, just keep it down, and should have walked back out. Like, I was an RA at school and my senior year, and you walk in, you make sure that they know that they're doing stuff so that they'll keep it under control, and then you just walk back out. You warn them and be like, keep it down, don't go in the halls, keep the door closed. You don't act like a narc like these security guards did.
Well, it was really weird too, because we still don't have a great understanding of the sort of hierarchy and structure on Galactica. which is something I think the new one did much better, establishing things like that. But so I was confused when they came in, because like, are they a different part of the force? Because at least on the reboot, like the pilots were kind of hot shit. They kind of got to do whatever the heck they wanted.
They were defending everyone.
And then these guys came in, like, yes, being high and mighty in a way they didn't need to, but I'm also like, who do these guys outrank pilots? Are they a separate force? Are they just like their superior officers? Or I didn't even get what the relationship was, or the dynamic, or why they're bothering to set this up. Like, that was another thing that came in and then went nowhere. They didn't need to get in trouble for stealing the drinks. They could have just been, hey, here's the bachelor party in full swing waiting for Apollo, which I like that idea. Like, I've never been at a bachelor party where the person you're having the party for isn't there, but everyone else is like, let's just party it up. Maybe they'll get here at some point.
This is a good segue, because in regard to that point and how the reboot did a much better job of making us understand the military and the structure, which I think maybe I'm misremembering, but I think this is the first time they actually refer to Colonel Ty as the XO, the executive officer.
I think that's correct.
In which, by the way, I really liked Terry Carter as Ty, and I loved, can't think of his name, but I loved the actor who played Ty as a character. Was really good in both the reboot and in this one. Mm-hmm. But if they were going to allow, bearing in mind that these are the only pilots that we have available on Galactica, don't you think the XO would have been like, half of you guys can party, the other half has to stay sober in case we get attacked by Cylons, and then in 8 hours, you guys can have the party and you guys are going to have to stay sober? Or thirds, whatever.
100% agree. And I think that speaks to something that this one has not done very well at, which the reboot did. You've talked about it, the kind of constant sense of existential dread, and we always got to be on alert and ready. And the sense of just like a military hierarchy and following orders and having plans. Like, this basically seemed like there's no military where every single pilot think of, or even like government, think of like Designated Survivor or something. Like, we're having the State of the Union, we're going to have somebody stay somewhere else just in case there's some disaster. Like, you are literally the last warship left defending all of humanity. Yes. Maybe not the best idea to put all your pilots in one room getting drunk together all at the same time.
This is such a juxtaposition over 33 or whatever, the great first episode of the reboot, when all the pilots are taking stims and can't even go to sleep because they're trying to defend the entire fleet because the Cylons are right behind them. And meanwhile, these dudes are just getting wasted, which was very strange.
So, and also, Boomer and I want to call him Porkins. Jolly. Okay.
Is Jolly.
The Battlestar version of Porkins.
Yes, Jolly. His name is Jolly.
This whole plot happens because apparently there's decontamination, which we've never heard about before or dealt with, and they just introduced now in this episode. So look, that makes sense. There should be some sort of decontamination procedure. Weirdly, it apparently takes long enough that Boomer and Jolly just decided to skip it because they wanted to get right to the party, but short enough that when Starbuck and Apollo go through it, it literally delays them like 30 seconds.
Great point.
I was super confused about, and also like, shouldn't they be facing some kind, like, can you imagine on like the Edward James Olmos Galactica, if like your pilot just decided to skip decontamination and go to, like, you'd be court-martialed and like
shot. You infected everyone. You infected every capable pilot in the, well, and I shouldn't say that because all the female pilots were extremely capable. I think that was, and I will say as a blanket statement once again, the effects have held up. I mean, they haven't held up to 2021, but have held up in the context of,
and been much better than we
1970s.
expected in 1970s TV.
Yeah,
for
and
sure.
and I thought that was another cool space battle that they had at the end.
I actually thought that was one of the highlights of this episode for me. Like, they and shout out to the effects teams. It suffered from kind of the same problem a lot of the Star Wars space battles have, particularly in A New Hope. I think they figured it out a little better in the later ones. We're not exactly sure where everyone is in relation to each other. It's just kind of ships flying around against starfields.
Yeah.
But the ships looked like they were moving against the starfields. They had like good sweeping camera moves as the ships go by, and there was some logic to kind of the Cylon ships going here and these ships are going, like, that was a very well done, like, space battle.
I even liked during training when Starbuck calls out, because lasers don't stop. Like, they just keep going. So I liked in battle, in the training simulation, when Starbuck called out one of the women, he's like, yeah, great job. You killed that Cylon. You also killed me because I was right behind it or whatever.
Right.
And I thought that was a neat, like, oh yeah. Because there's always that classic shot they've done in Star Wars a million times. They did it basically here, where they blow up the enemy ship and then fly through
right
the flame
it,
or whatever.
Yeah.
And, you know, if you're going to save an X-Wing or a Viper in this case, and it's being chased by the Cylon ship, you, by dropping in behind that Cylon ship, are now kind of shooting at both
Right.
of them.
You need to
So
make
have
sure
be
you're
careful.
hitting an angle or something.
Right,
there. Yeah.
exactly. Which I actually thought they did a good job doing this.
No,
Before we get
good job
away
on that.
from...
We should take a break at some point.
Oh,
too.
yes. Yeah, let's take a break right now. We'll be right back after the break because I have a question for you, another plot thing that I probably just missed about Boomer and our good friend Jolly/Porkins.
Doctor, you understand the significance of these men. They are not just individuals. They're our only means of defense.
I understand all that, Commander. And that's your problem. Mine is keeping them alive.
Okay, we are back. And Mark, I probably just missed another plot point because I was refreshing the stupid NBC.com website multiple times. Why were Boomer and Jolly on the Cylon asteroid or whatever with the listening post? How did they know to get down there? Were they just another advanced scouting team, or what was happening there?
I also might have missed something there. They definitely were another advanced scouting team because there were like two directions they could go. And so Boomer and Porkins went one way and Apollo and Starbuck went the other. And so they saw that asteroid and they were supposed to scout it. But I don't know what made them like get down and land on it. Because remember, they're just like walking around and then they pull out the binoculars like, oh, there's like a Cylon base over there. That was weird.
Yeah. Yeah, okay, good. Because even if they were going that way for some defined reason, they wouldn't have seen that Cylon base unless they landed. Unless
No,
there was like a...
they landed and got out first because even Porkins says like, "Oh, good thing you caught that. I would have missed it." Like,
Yeah, so why did they land on that asteroid? Unless and
because
again, we
they
both
needed
could
to
have missed
land on the asteroid to catch the virus so they could go back and infect. You got to think where we're going with the plot here, Mike. Yeah. By the way, while we just praised the effects on the space battle, and I think rightly so, that alien set they were on, that was worse than a matte painting. That was terrible. I mean, it looked like a high school or maybe middle school production of like astronauts in space, and like, well, we'll put a cardboard cutout of a rock in front of them and like hang a moon off a string in the background. That'll look like they're on an alien planet, right? It was terrible.
It was terrible. Can we start talking about some character choices and maybe some acting character choices?
Yes. Can I ask you one more thing about the space thing? And
I will have
quick.
no idea.
No, a quick thing about the space battle. Did we already see in one of the earlier episodes, I thought the like trick, put on your reverse thrusters, get behind them, and they fly, and they reused it already?
Yes, I had the same
4?
note.
Okay.
That seems to be a very popular trick in the sci-fi world. And what was weird about this time that they used it is if you're going to do that and be like reverse thrusters, I'm pretty sure that there were no thrusters coming out of the front of the Viper to show
There
it
were
actually
not.
stopping. And then they kicked in the back thrusters again to do behind it. Yes, I think that is going to be the only... Because if you think about it, and Mark, this is part of the problem you just mentioned before the break about being able to keep track of where everyone is in this three-dimensional space, in a space battle, this is probably one of the only tricks that you can actually kind of make people understand what's happening. Because if you're fighting in 3 dimensions, it's probably, you're just kind of in a turning battle. Like whoever's going to get behind you is essentially who's going to win. So
honestly, it's a problem you have in any sort of like air-based battle. Like you think of Top Gun, which has a lot of like great shots of planes flying and stuff. But when you're watching some of the like, I remember watching it being like, I have no idea where these ships are. It's like, this plane flies by, this other plane flies by, and you're relying on the actors' lines or them looking like, oh, there he is in front of us, cut to shot of the plane, like, okay, it's in front of him. There's not a lot of shots with them together, and certainly when they're all trying to like get in position, it's really hard. Like, I mean, I don't know how to shoot it well so it would make sense spatially where things are.
You could rely heavily on the like heads up display that basically that looks exactly like the one when Darth Vader was going to blow up Luke Skywalker's X-Wing in the trench run, where you just wait and like no one's actually looking out their windshield. They're all just looking at this little screen and waiting for the ship to get right into their crosshairs before they shoot. And you know what drives me nuts about that is they always do that, wait until it gets right into the center of their thing, shoot, and the first few lasers always miss too.
Yep.
It's like you should have started shooting when you were getting close, and then the one that actually went across the thing would have been the one that hit it. That drives me nuts every single time. Why would you miss?
They basically stole that exact sequence from Star Wars of like
Yes.
the looking at the screen, the thing getting in the middle, they start shooting, the first two miss, then it cuts over to like, yeah.
They also stole the most egregious time when the Battlestar music sounds exactly like Star Wars music is during these space battle sequences. I should have written down exactly what part of Star Wars it reminded me of. I don't know if it's the start of the trench run, but the music in these battle sequences is almost exactly lifted. It feels like it's like the Muzak version of the Star Wars space battle sequences.
Well, like that, look, that's what they're trying to. This show is an exercise in how close can we get to Star
Right.
Wars without being sued, or as we found out
Totally.
from Derek, they did get sued. But one more thing on the space battles, and this is just something that maybe bugged me and wouldn't bug somebody
Everything bugs me.
less into film, I guess. But when the ships are taking off, and okay, so they have a very similar sort of takeoff sequence from Galactica as they do in the reboot, kind of going down.
They press the turbo button.
Go down the tunnel. There's one shot where it shows Athena like in the control room watching one of the cameras showing it taking off, and the camera stays on the ship and we see the tunnel whizzing by. Like you can see the ship, but it's like the camera would have to be on like high speed rails shooting. It's literally like the like think of like the Matrix shot where I know you hate the Matrix, but like the bullet time stuff where like the camera is like swooping through like faster than you know, people can move and stuff. And the camera's staying like locked exactly on the ship as it's going like 3,000 miles per hour and the tunnel whizzing by. I'm like, they just have a camera like on rockets that shoots along with it that then sends a feed to the command center for some reason. I don't know. I thought that was funny. Also, when they were taking off, Starbuck took off twice, which I thought was funny.
Maybe they repurposed. Are you sure you aren't just confusing Starbuck and Apollo because they basically are the same person? But maybe they just repurposed the camera that Colonel Ty had put into the bachelor party room just to watch the bachelor party happening. I thought that was also a very strange moment.
Yeah. I will say this, people are getting better at talking into the vid screens and actually like facing the camera and talking back to the other person, as opposed to the first couple episodes where like the president was unaware there was a vid screen and would like look off in random directions and talk to himself.
Yeah, thank God we didn't hear from the president.
I think he's dead, right?
Oh, is he?
I don't
Did
know.
they-
I'm asking.
I don't remember.
Clearly he's very important.
I have some Gaius questions.
Okay. If your question was, if you're in charge of a base ship, do you get that giant high chair that spins around and you just sit in that chair all day on a pillar and wait for someone to come in so you can spin around? The answer is yes.
Not joking. One of my notes is, how do you think he gets on and off that throne? Because there's this massive column pillar that he's sitting on top of, just spinning around. That seems like if you have to go to the bathroom, that seems just like a complete waste of time to be way up that
Well,
high.
there's no controls or anything in that room. Like, think of what Adama's doing in either the reboot or the original. He's like on the bridge, giving instructions to people, making decisions. Meanwhile, in the Cylon ship, you just like put your commander in this isolated room where they just sit there and wait until somebody comes to like make a report. They spin around, say something, and then turn back around and like sit in the chair another 6 hours. Like, is he playing Tetris or something while he's up there?
Can I ask what you think Gaius's motivation is? Like, why is he, and this is
Well,
not
he's
meant
getting
to
a
be an
paycheck
ignorant
for
question.
being in the show, so I assume his motivation is to earn the paycheck.
I mean the character. The character of
Oh,
Gaius.
there is
why
none.
is he okay? Yeah, because why is he aligned with the Cylons? Because Gaius in the reboot which is one of the best characters in that reboot, is one of the more complicated characters in that reboot. His motivation is survival. And he only goes along with the Cylons. He hates betraying the human race. And he only goes along with the Cylons to keep his ass safe. So this guy is...
And you're right. He's a really good character because, look, he's a villain in the reboot.
Yes, he's a great villain.
He's despicable, but you understand his motivation, and he's not I'm trying to be evil or do bad. I'm looking out for me first and just trying to do what I have to
sleep with
do
Tricia Helfer. Right. Those two things.
That's a good motivation for anyone, right?
Yes. This guy I have no idea. Evil, so fast. Like, why he's like the super villain. Like, he's basically on board with the Cylons' plan to destroy humanity for some reason. And I was like, is this power? Because Gaius in the reboot is a very cowardly character, and like you do get a couple moments where he actually stands up and does the right thing, and those are the great this is why I've liked Gaius all along, because even though, like you said, he's a villain, he's a great villain. I mean, he sold out humanity. He's the reason for the Cylon attack in the reboot. But this one is just this melodramatic pure evil that I don't get what his motivation is. They gave him, first of all, why'd they give him a base star? Like,
well, can we go one step? So you remember in one of the earlier episodes, like ended with, we're heading towards Earth. And then the next episode started with, we're trying to get to Carolon. And we're like, wait, what?
Yes.
Very similar here, because I thought the last episode ended with, there was like the new Supreme Leader or whatever they call their
Imperious.
Imperious Leader, Imperious Commander, something like I don't know. Whatever the head Cylon was. The old one was going to kill Gaius. And then there was a new one who said, we're all powerful. We can just have a truce with the humans. We don't need to bother exterminating them. Right. And Gaius was supposed to go meet with them and gain their trust somehow. Because remember, we were like, well, how is him showing up in a base ship going to get their trust? But that was the plan.
Oh, that's right.
Even if it was stupid, that was the idea.
That's right. It's Imperious Leader. You were
Then
correct.
we show up here, and I'm not sure, and I don't think his assistant Cylon, what's the guy's name? Lucifer.
Yes. Good.
Which seems like it should have symbolism, but doesn't seem to relate to anything. Lucifer's even seems to be confused. Are we going to attack them? No. Are we going to make contact and try to do the truce like we said in the last episode? No. What are we doing here?
What are we doing? Yes. Okay, good. And granted, this is not holding maybe my rapt attention the way it should be, considering we're doing a podcast about it. However,
it's also hard when every 4 minutes in the middle of a line, NBC breaks in for a commercial.
Yes.
And hey, can I note that, I don't know if this does this on yours, mine, they actually can't even get playing their commercials right. It'll play like a third of a way through one commercial, interrupt it to play another commercial, and then come back and pick up the end of the first commercial.
Yes. And I don't know if this is a common problem because we're, for some reason, binge watching Survivor, and on the CBS app, CBS All Access app, they have a real hard time. They'll be like cut in the middle of a line to go to their commercial, go through their commercial, and then when they cut back, you'll hear just the tail end of that line and then some blank space where they should have put that commercial, and then it'll go to the next thing. So I don't know if that's a common thing, but that shouldn't be a common thing. It shouldn't be that hard, and it's atrocious.
No, we have the technology
NBC
to
app
do
is
it.
atrocious.
But sorry,
yeah.
Back to your point about, okay, so you think you might have missed something, weren't paying as close attention.
No, I think the whole point was, I'm just saying, I'm glad that you are as confused by this as I was. And granted, I completely forgot that they're like giving the base star to go back and like make peace or whatever, which seems to not be the plan. So I'm glad that this is just confusing and not me. I felt like I was shirking my duties by kind of tuning in and out of this a little bit.
Well, going back to Gaius, and I think it's really instructive comparing him in the reboot to him here. So him in the reboot, yes, he keeps making cowardly decisions. He often makes decisions not helping the humans in favor of his own good. But like you said, he's trying to survive. So it's not admirable, but it's understandable. He is in the reboot, as you mentioned, partly responsible for the Cylons being able to like infiltrate their defense network and blow up all the people, but it's not intentional. He's basically lazy and overconfident and cocky, and kind of tries to do it to impress a girl who he does not know is a Cylon.
Right.
And that's not a spoiler because you find that out like 5 minutes into episode 1 that she's a Cylon.
Or an hour into this episode of Deja Review.
Right. I would recommend you watch the show instead of this episode of Deja. But so yes, he was responsible for that, but it wasn't intentional. Like, it was certainly due to his character flaws and stuff, but it wasn't like he was trying to sell out humanity. What I don't get here is Gaius really does seem to sell out humanity early on. Before any of the action we see, even in the first episode, something happened where Gaius made a deal with the Cylons. And if this was a really well-crafted thing, I thought from like episode 1, a big reveal and a backstory we were going to get was what happened, what was the deal he made, how did Gaius get in cahoots with the Cylons. And I'll throw out the Matrix one more time. Think of the scene
I'd love
where
to throw out the Matrix.
where Joe Pantoliano meets with Agent Smith in the Matrix, and he's like, I'm going to sell out people, and here's why. And it's not admirable. He's selling out all his friends and stuff, but at least there's like an explanation. You get it. He explains his motivation. We know why he is acting the way he does. And this Gaius, I just don't get. It never seems, he never even says like, wait, you promised me that I would be king of this world. Like, we don't get what he was getting out of this. And apparently the guy he made the deal with was going to kill him if that Imperious leader hadn't been replaced with another one. It's just very weird. And I hope, but I don't think the way things are going, we are going to find out. I hope they would tell us, how did Gaius get in cahoots with the Cylons at the start? What was his motivation? Even if it was bad, your motivation can't simply be, I want to wipe out the rest of humanity for no apparent reason. Like even like Bond evil villains always have some
reason
thing they're trying to accomplish for a reason. Yeah.
And I'm going to call out how great the reboot Gaius Baltar character was for yet another reason. Because remember, he did it accidentally, and then he was devastated that he realized that it was him that had caused this whole thing. And then it almost broke his brain, because for a long time you didn't know if Trisha Helfer's character was in him or if he was seeing her, if she'd implanted something.
And don't spoil
in
that
him.
for people who haven't seen it. Like, don't tell the answer.
Yeah. But you're going through this whole thing being like, is this has this become his conscience? Is this just, and frankly, and again, I can't think of his name, but the character the actor that plays Baltar, he didn't even need that. He did such a good job conveying the emotions that character was feeling, that he didn't necessarily need that. But you literally had the conscience, this Trisha Helfer, that keeps showing up and talking to him and kind of taunting him about what he's done to humanity.
And also unclear if she's conscience like good or if she's still like a Cylon implant trying to manipulate him into doing what the Cylons would want.
And then not only that, Baltar in the reboot tries to play both. He tries to save his ass with the Cylons by saying, oh, I'm doing this thing that you want me to do. And he's not actually accomplishing it. They want him to like make a Cylon test and do all this stuff. And he's like, oh, I totally did it, to save his own ass, but not betray humanity. The whole time, he's such a great character and such a conflicted character, because I get it. Survival is something that is, you almost can't fight it, like your own human nature to survive. But he's not trying to just destroy humanity because of it.
No, his goal is not to do bad. His goal is to survive, and
save himself.
But I feel like that's a really high bar. He is such a great villain character, and in such a great show. There are plenty of other villains who are just plain out villains, but think of Palpatine in Star Wars. Like, there doesn't seem to be anything redeeming about him, but like, okay, he wants to be powerful and in charge of everything, so that's why he's doing things. This Gaius is almost just like Snidely Whiplash, like twirling his mustache, like, I'm evil because we need somebody in the show to do evil things. Like, there's no thought or intention behind it, at least that we've seen. And I think 4 episodes into a series that only ran for 1 season, they need to have given us more than that.
I agree. And just because I have forgotten both their names and they're both excellent actors, the reboot's Colonel Ty is played by Michael Hogan, and I knew his name was James, but for some reason couldn't pull it. But Gaius was played by James Callis in the reboot. Both excellent actors, and both should get more work, and both just really knew these characters. Or maybe they just made the characters theirs and the writing went along with it, because they were both excellent in those roles.
Okay, so while we're talking about knowing characters and motivations and stuff, can you explain to me the Starbuck Athena relationship? Because last we saw them, so they established in the first episode very clumsily, but that there's some sort of backstory or potential connection between them. And then we're on the casino planet, and Starbuck has his, I forget what they call him, prostitute, whatever their job name was in Battlestar, and Athena sees him with her, and he's about to take her back to their casino hotel room, and so they have kind of like a blow up. Oh, and she also like blows the steam at him when he's in the launch tube that for some reason has a camera in it.
Yes.
Then in this episode, at that opening dinner party, there's like this weird, like she's being nice to him and like a little flirty smile, and he like and like runs off. I have no idea what's going on with them. I literally didn't even get, even if it was done clumsily, what they are trying to accomplish with them, like what the intention of
I think I
what
got
that dynamic's
part.
supposed to be. Okay.
I think they're the Sam and Diane will they won't they is what they're going to try to establish with the two of them. I agree with you. There's some backstory. They were together at some point, and I think the reason for him running out, I think there is interest on both sides of them getting back together. I think the reason for him running out that they kind of get to later in the episode, that kind of weird scene between Starbuck and Apollo when he's like, it's not going to be like, you know, like it was after he gets married, like they're not going to have a friendship or something anymore. Very strange, because you are literally the last gasp of humanity, so you don't have an option of having many other best friends.
And you literally all live on the same ship. Like
exactly. Also, I think it was a little presumptuous of Starbuck to assume that he was going to be the best man for Apollo, and I don't think Apollo had actually asked him yet. But I think that
would have been a better scene if Apollo's like, actually, I already asked Boomer. I hope that's
exactly.
okay.
You should have asked Jolly. I bet that guy knows how to throw a party. But
I will say, I actually wrote down in that scene, it's 16 or 17 minutes into a 49-minute episode, that I was still trying to figure out what the plot was. And I thought, okay, so is the plot of this episode going to be about Starbuck's worry about losing his friend and how that resolves? Because, again, 40% of the episode through, that's the closest to a plot line we had gotten, was that it was going to be Starbuck having to come to accept Apollo getting married.
Starbuck, are you jealous? Yeah, I guess in a way I am. Don't tell anyone else, huh? No, I won't tell anybody else.
I'm just throwing that out since it's in that scene you just mentioned, and an example of how little the plot was progressing anywhere or making sense at that point. Go on.
That was pretty much it. I think that your impression of what they have is correct. I think that the reason for this is because they want a Sam and Diane. They want a will they, won't they relationship to always be chasing. Frankly, kind of what they did in the reboot with Starbuck and Apollo. They kind of had a will they, won't they the whole time too, because there was clearly some interest there too. And obviously a lot more chemistry with those actors.
Well, I want, so the Sam and Diane, I mean, obviously that's a classic one, but it's an interesting reference because it's a sitcom, and the idea of a sitcom is basically like there would always be some sort of mix-up shenanigans. They're almost going to get together, they have a little spat, and they end kind of back where they started, and we can recycle to the next episode. And I wonder if maybe this is partly on me. One of the things I liked about the reboot, and it's just my own taste, is it was a show that progressed. It wasn't a sort of Law and Order style, and I know a lot of people love Law and Order, and it's very good at what it does, but the characters don't really grow in Law and Order. Each episode is sort of self-contained, and in the next episode we're back to where we started. It's The Simpsons, right? Homer can go be an astronaut and come back, and the next episode starts, the kids are still the same age, he's still at the nuclear power plant, blah blah blah. And maybe that's just the style they're going for, is like they'll have their little spat, and then the next episode they're back to where they were at the beginning, and we just keep recycling that or progressing it very slowly. I mean, some sitcoms, the characters do progress, but not in the same way that they would in a more serialized drama, which is more prevalent today. And maybe that just wasn't what they wanted to do at this point.
While we're on the topic of romance and relationships in Battlestar Galactica, I want to pre-correct, because everyone's probably screaming at the podcast. It was definitely not Kaylee that killed herself. It was Dee, who was played by Candace McClure, that married Apollo in the reboot and killed herself. But she was this great character, beautiful woman that that was who. It was not Callie. I think Callie was the one that was hooking up with Chief with the bangs.
Yes, that's correct.
And Dee is the one that married. So I apologize for my earlier, if you guys are having an aneurysm thinking about how badly I screwed that up. Okay, I just have one other thing that I want to talk about because I think it's the most topical thing that is going on right now.
The virus?
Quarantine, the disease. Yeah, the virus. So I even have in my notes, ooh, a quarantine, how topical. But I have some questions about this disease. One, I thought it was super weird that Adama, because the only thing that had manifested itself before they all locked these pilots into these cryogenic tubes was people were a little bit dizzy to the point where like Ty is like, oh, you guys are just drunk. And Adama's like, this disease is going to be the end of us all. I'm like, these guys are just a little bit dizzy. And it was a very weird jump from, hey, we don't even know what this is. But then the doctor knew an awful lot about this disease, like immediately. It was very strange to me how they were treating this disease, which is, I guess, probably the opposite of how we're treating the disease in real life, where we don't know anything and we're not doing anything to prevent it. So
on the bright side, unlike the reboot, so far the only thing where I'll give props to the original over the reboot, the doctor was not smoking all the time, so he had that going for him.
I love that doctor from the reboot, though.
That's just one of those like personal pet peeves. I just like can't. It bothers me every time I see like, every time I see people smoking in space, I just think is ridiculous.
You know, I understand that obesity is a serious issue in this country and everything, but it's kind of funny that there are like obese doctors because it's like, you know how bad this is for you. You know what this is doing to you. And I think I would have a hard time going to an obese doctor. Does that make sense?
So yeah,
is that insensitive? I'm sorry.
Maybe, I don't know. Depends why they're obese, I guess.
I want to call out to Donnelly Rhodes played Dr. Sherman Cottle on Battlestar Galactica. He was the chief medical officer. Donnelly Rhodes. It was great. He got this very gravelly voice. Oh, he just died in 2018. Well,
that's a bummer.
But this very gravelly voice, and was a great character actor in that series, in the reboot.
Yeah. So in this one, the doctor seemed to find out a lot. I think the idea was, and they just didn't show it. So like first they're kind of like dizzy, and then we do see Boomer like literally like pass out and hit the ground. And I think the idea was whatever it's doing is like something that's progressing very quickly, and they have to like freeze them before it completely kills them. They don't really explain how it's progressing or what it's doing. So here's the other question I had related to all the people being quarantined and the pilots basically all being in these giant cryotubes. Thank goodness they had a gajillion of those ready to go.
Yeah, good point.
That they like moved into the lounge where the,
yes.
Like I was like, those things look like they probably need like heavy duty power and controls. Wouldn't it be easier to like put the people in some sort of isolation thing and move them to the med lab? Anyway,
totally.
But all the people are in these cryo things that my understanding of it, and they're kind of vague, was this is stopping the disease from progressing. Like you basically sort of frozen them in place.
Yeah, totally.
Well, if they're frozen in place, and as far as Adama knows, I know we have seen that the Cylons are now tracking them and Gaius is following them. But as far as Adama knows, there's no Cylons around. Why is it so urgent that they have to launch all these untested pilots like on their first day? Well, we got to launch them and go explore the asteroid now, because I get that the doctor needs to go to the asteroid to try to get like a raw sample of the virus or find out more about it. Okay.
Yeah.
Everyone who has the disease is like currently frozen. Let's train for another couple weeks while they're frozen and nothing's happening. And then when they're like legitimately ready to go fly, then let's go explore the asteroid. We'll just hang here for a few days. And I like, this was not a post-haste conclusion. This was like, while I was watching the episode and they raised the question, I'm like, why don't you guys just train a couple days more? And Adama's like, all right, let's send them out. I'm like,
yeah, bizarre.
That felt weird. And if you're thinking of the plot points here, if it could have been, they have this, we have no way to stop or slow it down, and they're all going to die in the next 24 hours. There's your ticking clock.
Yeah. Yeah. Not a lot of thought was put into that. But we put probably way too much thought into this entire episode. So do you have anything else, Mark?
The only other thing I would like to mention is I mentioned in a previous episode that they keep coming up with words just to sound different.
And they keep saying
centon for time.
Yes. Yeah, it's annoying.
And that's like the only time unit they use, but it means vastly different things. Like the one time is like, they've been gone for a centon and it's apparently way too long. And another time guys like be back in a centon.
Yep.
And like, I'm like, is this just like Smurf? Like it just means whatever you want it to?
Yes. Yeah, I thought the same thing. And it's funny you say that because I thought the same thing about the unit of time.
All right, let's wrap her up.
Okay, should we rate this episode first?
Yeah.
Out of a scale 1 to 5.
What did we rate the last ones? Because I know we have scaled our scale to Battlestar levels.
Yes, and I think the last one was a 3. I think our best episode so far was a 3.
I think that's
the last
right.
one.
I thought this was a step backward from the previous
Yes.
episode, but not as bad as the first ones have been.
Agreed,
so
which I think were 1s or 1.5.
Okay, so I'll go with 2.
That's
we had
exactly
a 2
what
yet?
I have. That's exactly what I have. I haven't actually been keeping track of these, so when you go back and edit these, maybe if you can pull out all the star ratings and put them in a little document for us. But I am pretty sure that our first couple were a 1 or a 1.5, and then the third episode, the conclusion of the first big movie, was a 3, and I agree that this is a 2.
That makes me a little bit sad because I was hoping that like they ended the last one on a high note and like, all right, now that they've gotten through their like big pilot and kind of can settle into doing weekly, I was hoping we would be on an upward trajectory, and we left room, right? We did a 3, so we still have a 4 and a 5 we could get to, but this was a half step backwards at least.
Yeah, but I think that they're falling into the same problem that we had with the first 2 parts of the big movie to start with. So I'm hopeful that the second part of this, and then I would really like to get into just a one-off episode that we're hoping to see.
I think the next one after it was so this was episode 4. Episode 5 is part 2 of this one, and I think looking ahead, episode 6 is a 1-parter.
It should be.
And I seem to recall my over-under for how far into this we would get was 7. And so I'm like, if 6 and 7 are both 1-parters, I think we can make it to 7.
Agreed. We don't need to guess what our next episode is going to be because it's just Lost Planet of the Gods Part 2, right?
Do we have any idea why this is called Lost Planet of the Gods? Because nothing in this episode seems at all relevant to that. So maybe that's in Part 2?
No, I assume Lost Planet of the Gods is just Earth, which is what they're trying to find the whole series. So I think this is just kind of a, hey, this sounds sci-fi-esque.
There's the bit about Adama like looking at the old Atari 2600 screen that apparently has their like records.
Yeah, he's like reading their lore.
But it's something about like something flew into and that was how they found Cobol or something was flying into this black void. So maybe that's where we're headed for episode 2.
Well, it just seems that all of these are going to be called, because it was Search for a Star World and now Lost Planet of the Gods.
Saga of a Star World.
Saga of a Star World. Yeah, we're just looking for Earth. So I assume they're going to continue looking for Earth.
I want to see the episode called We're Just Looking for Earth.
Thank you, everyone, for listening. This was Deja Reviewed. If you want to watch along with us, you can use the NBC app, or you can go to NBC.com to watch full episodes for free. As we just discussed, we'll be watching episode 5 on NBC.com, which is called Lost Planet of the Gods Part 2. If you're enjoying Deja Reviewed, please leave us a rating and a comment wherever you're listening to us. If you're enjoying the podcast, please subscribe and tell a bunch of people about us. You can find us at DejaReview.com. You can find all of our social media there, Twitter. You can send us a tweet, leave us a voicemail or a text message, and we hope to see you again next time.
Deja Review.
Compared to Twilight Zone, there's not as much deep stuff to talk about, so we end up just sort of talking about the plot and trying to figure it out.
And the other problem is these are way longer.
And the other problem is the show's not very good.
I'm definitely not disliking it as much as I thought I would, though. If the NBC site was functional for me and I didn't have to fucking refresh and an hour's thing didn't turn into an hour 15, I would be like, okay, I can handle this.